All right, welcome back. So let's get into our panel discussion for the evening. And as always, we look forward to getting your views on this one. But this is where we start. Pan-African activist Mr. Mordekai Shumba says, while Zimbabwe marks 45 years since independence, that'll be tomorrow, of course, many citizens live in exile. He questioned the relationship between South Africa's ANC and that country's governing ZANU-PF, for saying it can be viewed by some as enabling repression. Some Zimbabweans have chosen to live in South Africa for a better life, sparking anger among some locals who claim the country's resources are strained because of this. Of course, Shumba joins us in studio. We also are joined by ANC NEC member Lindiwe Zulu, joining us in studio. On the line, we are joined by ZANU-PF spokesperson Mr. Farai Marapira and political economist Mr. Biniza. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I think this is such an important discussion, and what I want to do, and perhaps you remember this, former minister, last year when we had our State of the Nation address, quite the conversation that was sparked in South Africa, right? Yeah. 30 years of democracy, we had a conversation about Dintswalo. Mordekai Shumba then highlighting that he was born on the 18th of April, 1980, so the same age as the, the democracy that is, or the, the independent Zimbabwe. So an interesting analogy there. But you really wanted to have this conversation and bring it forward. So I'll let you take the stage first as the activist who says, this is the conversation we should be having now.
Okay. My name is Mordekai, and I was born on 18 April 1980, and I'm sure you can start seeing the white hair coming in. So I represent a lot of the aspirations of Zimbabwean people. And the Zimbabwean issue has been spoken about so many times. Some people are getting tired because Zimbabwe is not moving from where it used to be. The numbers don't lie. When you look at the GDP, it's always going to be low, no matter how many resources that we are able to get. Right. When President Mnangagwa became president in 2017, after Mugabe was ousted, I think you will remember that the GDP was about 51 billion. Now, in 2018, it went down to 25 billion. Right. If you look at I want to put this in perspective. When you look at the city called Nelspruit, the GDP right now is 32 billion. Does Nelspruit have any lithium mines? No. It doesn't. Does it have platinum? No, it doesn't. Does it have any gold? As much as Zimbabwe has got. Today, the GDP of Zimbabwe is 35 billion. That's just like Nelspruit. Okay. It's less than half of South Africa. So I'm boring you with these figures so that you know that Zimbabwe has not moved away from how it was in 1980. It's just a story of hope that never moves away from hope. And even the opposition is just a story of change that never comes. Okay. And yeah.
So this is what I want to do as we start the conversation, is for all of our panelists to characterize how they would describe 45 years of independence in Zimbabwe. Perhaps let's hear from ZANU-PF first. Mr. Marapira, you are, of course, spokesperson for ZANU-PF. We really appreciate you giving us your time. How would you characterize how the country celebrates 45 years of independence tomorrow, and what the 45 years of Zim have looked like in a statement?
In 1980, Zimbabwe was a country which won political independence and had little economic independence for its own citizens. Fast forward to 2000, when we underwent US sanctions and European Union sanctions, Zimbabwe became a country in which the economy, which was run by multinationals, closed overnight. And this saw a rapid decline in our economy and in the livelihoods of our people. But we fast forward to 2025, Zimbabwe is breaking all records. We have broken agricultural output records. Zimbabwe is grain self-sufficient. Zimbabwe has expanded since 2017, has expanded irrigable land by almost 40,000 hectares. Zimbabwe is a country which has broken records in tobacco production, broken records in gold production. We are breaking records in everything. We are not a country which is yet in this utopia. We are not a country which is yet where we want to be, but we are a country which is definitely on the way. And it takes vision for one to see things like this. It's a simple question of, is there progress or not? And the progress is there. The infrastructural activities going on under the ZANU-PF-led government. We are climate-proofing Zimbabwe at a pace which is unprecedented. Dams which were mooted by colonialists in the early 1900s are 90% complete now under our administration. So Zimbabwe is a success story in the making on the back of the sweat and the efforts of its people.
Okay.
We are no longer a country that is built by anyone from without. We are our own builders and we are our own developers, and we are moving very well.
All right. Mr. Farai Marabira, they're speaking for ZANU-PF. Let's talk about the position of the ANC. You know, you have, for instance, Mr. Shumba, who says this relationship between ZANU-PF and ANC is enabling some of the challenges that are being faced in Zimbabwe. And perhaps you can take us back as well into the history, which I think is incredibly important for us to understand where that relationship is centered. And then when the ANC looks within itself at the state of ZANU-PF and certainly Zim, what are the conversations and what do they look like?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. And I think there's something me and him, we share. He's born on the 18th, I'm born on the 21st of April. So maybe we can start there. And the second point is younger, very younger generation, way younger generation, older generation. I would therefore refer to the relationship of ZANU-PF and the African National Congress in the context of a liberation struggle that was carried by ZANU-PF, ZANU-PF, ANC in South Africa. It's a relationship that was born out of struggle. It's a relationship that we have cherished throughout the years. However, it is also a relationship that has gone through trials and tribulations. We cannot deny that. It is a relationship where the African National Congress, having attained its own democracy, is looking at itself and how it can be able to influence others around ourselves so that our focus should be about the people. It is a relationship that says, as Farai is saying, Zimbabwe is a country that have all these mineral resources, the agriculture and all. It is a country where we, as the African National Congress, are saying, what can we do to learn from each other? What kind of institutions do we need to have as institutions of government? What lessons can we learn so that we can influence each other? Just a quick one. We have been having this conversation for a very long time. I don't want to go back to the history which is known. Recently, as the African National Congress, together with the liberation movements of the region, we have agreed we have to come together as liberation movements to specifically talk about this struggle that we carried and the promises that we made to our people. Are we still there? Are we still sticking to ensuring that the economy becomes an economy that benefits the people? Can we also look at ourselves as liberation movements and say, in today's world, with the current global challenges and everything, are we still on the right track? This is a summit that we are going to be having next month in May. It will give us an opportunity to be honest, to be frank, and to look at each other in the eye and say, yes, when it comes to the liberation, we did very well. Yes, when it comes to elections, for instance, we created institutions that give people the opportunity to elect. Yes, when it comes to using our mineral resources for the benefit of the people, are we doing that? Why are we doing that? It is because we're looking at the global challenges, particularly that are facing not only us, as in the region, the two countries, but facing the entire world.
Yeah, but I want to bring Mr. Biniza here because you're a political economist, and what we hear from our speakers here, I mean, Mordekai Shumba starts off with GDP numbers and he starts with the stats of what the economy looks like in Zim, even liking it to, you know, a province, you say, to a town, liking it to a town in Mpumalanga. And then, of course, Farai and Mamzulu here talking about well, there is the political strides, some of the economic strides, but also the political relationship. When I ask you how you characterize 45 years of independence in Zimbabwe and certainly the role of South Africa in its political and economic health and trajectory, how would you characterize that, Sia?
Sure. Look, I would say that Zimbabwe's experience post-independence has been mixed. On the positive side, I think there's a lot that has been mentioned already with the political strides. And I think Zimbabwe's role in the region, SADC, should never be understated. And I think that's one of the real positive, I think, achievements post-independence that Zimbabwe has had as the founding partners of SADC, as one of the prominent countries also within the region, I think alongside South Africa. I do think, though, that the economy has really been battled over the last sort of 10, 15 years. However, things have become slightly improved with the introduction of the ZiG currency, some of the reforms that the Reserve Bank has implemented in terms of its allocation of forex. And so I do think that Zimbabwe could turn a corner. There's a huge potential played, obviously, by the opportunities within the critical minerals in the just energy transition, which Zimbabwe is heavily endowed by. And I think Zimbabwe should take advantage of this. On the economy side, though, I do want to end on a last point to say that I think a large part of the Zimbabwean economic story is not captured, because the economy has got large tracts which have become informalized due to the recurring economic crisis. And I think that if you look at just some of the quality of life or the resilience that Zimbabwean lives in and of themselves, demonstrate, there's a lot of, I think, activity and productivity from the people themselves, which may not necessarily be captured by economic growth matrices, etc. And also as a consequence of the economic crises that have informalized the economy. And so for me, it's a mixed bag, some positives, but really some economic challenges that need to be dealt with head on.
Yeah, all right. We're gonna talk a little bit more, and of course we're taking your WhatsApps on 072-110-5584, or give us a call on 010-594-6010. Mr. Shumba, you in the piece that you wrote, you also perhaps wanted to touch on the issue of the ANC and the ZANU-PF relationship and what it means in present day. And not just, the liberation movements and what they were able to do pre-1994, certainly pre-1980. Talk to us about how you take issue with the relationship as of today.
Okay. I loved Mugabe, the young Mugabe. I think and I'm speaking to South Africans, everyone, when you saw Mugabe punching the air, Tony Blair, keep your Britain and I'll keep my Zimbabwe, everyone loved that. That's the revolutionary that gained independence for us. But the Mugabe that later ruled from around 1990 up to the time when he was 93, many of you will have to ask yourself, why is it that nearly 5 million people have left that country? If it is so rosy, if it is so good. Zimbabweans are skilled and they are very enterprising. And they are people that love their roots. They are embarrassed when they are in a country that is not theirs. They don't want to be here. Many South Africans that I've worked with always ask me, but why are you guys here? You have got land and so forth. The problem is one, ZANU-PF is brutal. These people, they beat their fellow Zimbabweans. Now, many people will be saying, you are reading Western media and so forth. I'm telling you from my experience. We are a family of 4. 3 brothers and 1 wonderful sister. The 3 brothers have been tortured and beaten. And the day that I came to South Africa, I was looking so handsome, swollen. That's the only time I get sent when I've been beaten. And I remember the experience of lying in a cell that was so dark. And there had been drunkards that had, left their poop and vomit. And I was lying in there, and I could feel maggots crawling on my skin. Even today, whenever there is load shedding, I do not want to sleep in the dark. That is a lasting legacy that the government of Zimbabwe have left with me. My brother Gabriel Shumba was called by his lawyer to just go and represent his client. He went there and he got arrested. He was being accompanied by my brother, and they were charged with treason. They were tortured. And I want to speak directly to South African people because sometimes we talk about torture to say, my girlfriend didn't come and is torturing me. Right. Here is what the police do because there is no daylight between ZANU-PF and the government and the state. Right. The police, what they do, they've got this contraption, according to what my brother told me. They put a wire in your mouth. You can Google that. They put a wire in your mouth. They tie one on your toe. The other one, they put on your genitals, right? That's the good part. Then they switch on the electricity, right? My brother was explaining to me that you do like,
okay,
right? And then when they switch off, you only hear a voice like a cat whose tail has been cut. 10 seconds later, that's when your brain registers that that's my voice.
Okay. And I do need to, just for the sake of our viewers, say we do apologize for some of the graphic nature, but it paints a graphic picture. And I want to get the view of all of our speakers here on when Mordekai speaks about the brutality that has been experienced by some Zimbabweans. What do our speakers say about that, as Mordekai Shumba, an activist, has put forward? But we're taking calls, 0105946010. Mulwantwa is in Ekuruleni. Mulwantwa, good evening.
Good evening, Austin Lady, my favorite program.
Thank you so much, Ndate. Thank you for calling. Talk to us.
You know, Austin Lady, it's so painful that, you know, in Africa, we engage in a guerrilla war of the revolution to liberate the people. But the outcome of it, we found that, no, it doesn't change the majority of the larger people of that particular country. I mean, 45 years, Zimbabwe has been independent, but the Zimbabwean people, they're scattered all over the world. There's hunger, shortage of food, there's unemployment, there's a violation of suppression of opposition political parties. So what is the importance of this 45 years of independence? It doesn't mean nothing. It's only politicians who get richer, and the people who have the proximity of the politicians who are in power, they're enriching themselves and their families.
Okay. Molanta, thank you so much. Yeah, I think your point is heard. And thank you so much for calling in. We really do appreciate it. We're taking WhatsApps as well on 0721105584. Salim is in Witbank. Salim, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm well, sir. Talk to us. Thank you for calling.
Yes. Yeah, I just want to comment about our country. You know, the biggest challenge we have in Zim, we don't have good leaders. If we were having good leaders, I don't think so. Millions and millions of Zimbabweans, they are scattered all over in diaspora. Instead, to build our country, to work together, everyone must benefit the mineral we have, but it's opposite to what is happening. An example, if you check the road from Blawayo to Vic Falls, it's very bad. It's very painful. Even if you use your truck there or your end of the vehicle, you want to use that road to go to the Vic Falls, it's terrible.
Okay.
But we are in 45 years in independence, but they can't even fix those roads. You can see they are giving big cars to the chiefs and everything, but if you go to the hospital, there is no medicine, there is no beds and everything. You know, even the health workers, the salary they are getting is peanuts and everything. But our leaders, which are there, they are just thinking for themselves
Salim,
only.
thank you so much for calling in. We really appreciate it. We do have, of course, spokesperson for ZANU-PF with us, Mr. Farai Marapira, and a lot for him to respond to as well on the other side of this short break. Be part of the conversation as well. We are back in a moment. Welcome back. We're keen to hear your thoughts on the discussion that we're having. Tomorrow marks 45 years since the independence of Zimbabwe. And as we reflect on what that 45 years has meant, certainly for our neighbor also, how the development and some of the challenges that Zimbabwe faces impact us here at home. Let's, of course, remember that it is estimated that between 1 to 3 million Zimbabweans live here in South Africa. That's a big contentious issue, with South Africans arguing that this is taking away from the resources of locals. So be part of the conversation, 072-110-5584, to send us a WhatsApp. Let's see some of those that have come in. Raymond M. says, good evening, Naledi. The issue of Zimbabweans is critical since a lot of them are undocumented, of which that means contravening with SA immigration laws. That's for starters. Secondly, some employers are taking advantage of their situation by employing them as cheap labor. On that regard, in so many ways, they are taking SA down with them. Raymond, we appreciate your input. Thank you for sending in that message. Let's see some more. SM Zulu says, South African government must stop supporting ZANU-PF. It is failing people of Zimbabwe in many ways. SM Zulu, thank you so much for sending in that one. And Loiso Godli says, in Zimbabwe, it's all about power, access to resources and political protection. We all thought when Mugabe left it's going to be better, but it's getting worse. Even those who want Mnangagwa out are not going to change anything, but it's their time to eat. So thank you so much for your contributions. Mr. Marapira, let's bring you in here. You know, before we went into the break, Mr. Shumba there talking about the brutality that he says is experienced by so many in the country. And I wonder what you say in response to that, when he characterizes his family and said so many members of his family have been on the other side of it. And then there's the issue of 1 to 3 million Zimbabweans living in South Africa. Is that just economic, or does that brutality have something to do with it? So how do you respond to some of the ideas that he's put forward?
Well, in all honesty, I believe that he has been watching too many movies, because some of the allegations he's been putting out here, we're not at a rally. This is a meeting of facts. This is an interaction where we are speaking on empirical matters. So I do not want to go much into his allegations because they are inconsequential and they are without substance and proof. Then on the other things, Zimbabwe is not a failed state. Zimbabwe is a nation which is developing on its own terms, on its own strength, and by the sweat of the people's brows. We did go through a very, very challenging time, and our people went into the diaspora, and we respect Zimbabweans in the diaspora because their remittances have been part of what has helped our country to regain its footing. And to my colleague who was complaining about the Bulawayo Victoria Falls Road, like the Beitbridge Harare Road, which is now complete, like the Bulawayo Harare Road, which is now complete, the Beitbridge, the Bulawayo Victoria Falls Road is under repair, expansion, and construction to SANDAC standards. So this is just part of the infrastructural work we are putting in as ZANU-PF as per the mandate we received in 2023. We are doing a lot of infrastructural work. Every city you enter, there is a building going up. The private sector has so much confidence within our country. The story of a Zimbabwe that is a failed state, the story of a Zimbabwe in which nothing is functioning, was once a story that had truth in it, but no longer today. There are no queues for anything in Zimbabwe. We are developing. We are building infrastructure at an astronomical rate. We are one of the fastest growing economies in Africa, and this is something that has been reported by the World Bank itself. So for people to try and to continue to demonize Zimbabwe, trying to make Zimbabwe look like it is a failed state, we are not failed. We are not a failed state. We are a country which is finding its footing. We are a country which has found which is now grounded. We are a country which is moving forward. I repeat, we are not yet where ourselves would want to be. But the important thing is we are setting up the structures that make this a necessity. I've spoken before and I don't want to be repeating myself, but what I simply gave you in my first statement, this is what shows the development of a country. This is what shows the progress of a country. All the countries that have gone under economic turmoil and have resuscitated themselves, if you look at how they've done it and you look at how and at the things that we're doing in Zimbabwe, you will see the pattern. Okay. There is no need to reinvent the wheel. Yes.
All right. Former Minister, let's bring it back home here. I mean, you're sitting right here and you're able to hear just the emoting from Mordekai Shumba when he talks about the brutality. And then you hear Mr. Marapira saying, but we're a growing economy. We're on the up. See Biniza saying, we're on the up. But he says, though, that the relationship between ZANU-PF and the ANC as of now is enabling the brutality. What do you say to that as of 2025?
No, there is no organization outside of Zimbabwe that can be enabling for any form of brutality, least of all the African National Congress. We have a long history, by the way, of our own engagement with Zimbabwe way back from the time they even had a GNU. It was this very African National Congress and the government of the African National Congress at the time, during the time of President Mbeki, including at the time of President Zuma, that we were consistently engaging not only ZANU-PF, but we were engaging government. We were also engaging all the partners of the GNU. So there is absolutely no way that the African National Congress can be supporting any form of brutality. I like what Farai is saying right now, to say once had truth to some of the things that he's speaking about. He's speaking about an economy that was not doing very well. He's speaking about a political environment that was not conducive for everybody else. As the African National Congress, we have been consistent even in our engagement with ZANU-PF, to say, quite frankly, when we see all these developments, they must relate to the day-to-day life of people, so that you don't have people complaining about the police brutality, so that you don't have people complaining about Zimbabweans crossing over to South Africa. Our consistency as the African National Congress has been that from freedom to democracy, there are things that might happen in between that might not be very good. And we've been very honest and very straightforward about that. Hence, I say to you, we're having this meeting because this meeting is very important for us as liberation movements. Why are we having this meeting? We're looking at what was happening in Mozambique, for instance. We look at what's happening in Zimbabwe. We look at what's happening holistically. And we are saying we need to assist each other with best practices. It is unfortunate that from time to time we keep on seeing on the screens people running away from the police, people saying they have been arrested, they've been tortured. It's very unfortunate, but as the African National Congress, we would like to say both to the people of South Africa and the people of Zimbabwe, our responsibility is to engage ZANU-PF as a party that we have known all these years and be able to say to each other, we don't think we agree with this way of doing things. We think we agree on this. There's nothing that would beat consistent engagement and being honest and frank to each other. And this is the platform that we are going to be having on our own, to listen to each other and also be honest and to say, if he comes here and he says there's people who are being tortured, why are people being tortured? If he comes in and says there's no political freedom as we have it in South Africa, why is it that? And Farai says there was a history of that nature. There's a lot of development that is making that change, but let us see that practically happening by even seeing the reduction of the number of people who are crossing from Zimbabwe into South Africa. Because look, I've been in exile myself. To leave your country and go to some place which you don't know, it's not something that you take very easily. So let us be given that opportunity to engage, because we need to be frank with each other in our engagement.
Yeah, Mr. Shumba, I need to bring this in because I imagine that this is a question that you've been asked a few times as you engage in Zimbabweans living in South Africa, the difficulty that they've left behind. And the question sometimes arises, that is, the country says it's on its way to continue developing itself. I'm sure you've been asked before, why don't you go home and help? Yes. What do you say to that?
The country has always been having this story of hope, but the party that is ruling right now, there is just lack of leadership, right? We have had a lot of national development plans from ISAP, Zim Asset, and now the National Development Strategy and so forth. These are great documents, but there is no implementation. There are three things that are wrong with Zimbabwe today. One, there are no checks and balances between the three arms of state right now. ZANU-PF has managed to, I'm sorry for the word, muddle and bastardize the institutions of government. The parliament is in disarray. They don't believe in the existence of opposition. They disable it to the extent that it's dysfunctional. I'm not making this up, right? When I started, I explained that the things that I'm explaining are the things that I have experienced in my life. And this is our government. This is ZANU-PF. You saw how we brushed it aside. The party is so insensitive. They believe they are the only ones that know how the country should go. And we go to elections most of the time. You often see the security apparatus calling a press conference and sitting there and saying, no one who has never fought in the liberation struggle will be able to lead this country. So you ask yourself, why do you go to elections anyway? Because we are not going to be allowed to get there. And then corruption. The corruption has become so ridiculously in your face. Ask him about Zisco Steel, where the concierge of corruption that is the investment banker of government officials called Kudakwashe Tagwire, they are taking over the government institutions that used to employ people, that used to make households survive. Now, I mentioned that Zimbabweans are very enterprising. Who would be able to work nicely in Zimbabwe? But it's because of the violence.
You're right.
In 2018...
Apologies. I need to take an ad break because obviously we need to pay our bills. But I also want to hear from our viewers. 01059460010. In fact, when we come back, we're going to wrap it up and let's put some ideas forward. As tomorrow Zimbabwe reflects on 45 days of its independence, what is it that it needs to work on, and certainly what is the role of its neighbor, South Africa?
Our responsibility as citizens, as members of the ANC, PAC, name all the liberation movements. I'm saying this to Zimbabweans because it is not South Africa that can solve the problems of Zimbabwe. South Africa can contribute towards that. It is Zimbabweans themselves that must take everything into their hands and be able to say, this is how we would like to see change in our country.
Mr. Shumba, final thoughts.
Yes, I want to speak directly to South Africans. When you see your leaders standing by people that are brutalizing us, they are forcing us to come to your country. We don't want to be here. Secondly, I want to speak to Zimbabweans. The time for cynicism has to end. We have spoken about change for a very long time, but this is 45 years. I'm going to leave you with an acronym. WWOCB. We want our country back. We have to unite for that.
All right. Mr. Marapira, I'll give you the final bite here. As ZANU-PF tomorrow, Zimbabweans in South Africa, what do you want them to be reflecting on?
We thank you for your efforts, which have been part of our economic turnaround, the remittances that you have piled on us, and the exemplary way in which you've been working in countries across the world is a source of pride. But however, it is not something which is intangible that Zimbabwe is developing. The World Bank has got reports on the developments happening on our economy. This is statistical. This is factual. We cannot be coming here to act like we are addressing a rally. This is not a rally. This is not a place to pontificate. This is a place to spread the truth, to speak empirically, to give out the numbers. We are one of the fastest growing economies in Africa, as per the World Bank. We have been turning around our economy, and we are in the top 10 investment destinations in Africa. Again, as per the World Bank, and I challenge anyone, it's a simple thing. You can research. So the Zimbabwe that other people are trying to create, which they try to demonize, which they try to make a pariah state, this is no longer the Zimbabwe. This is a Zimbabwe which is on the rise. We are not yet where we want to be, but we are definitely on the way. We're in the tunnel, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. And we thank you, our brothers in the ANC. We have been through a struggle. We continue to struggle together, and we continue to be honest, and we continue to be frank with one another. We continue to build one another. We continue to groom one another. And in May, this is exactly what we'll be doing. So to the people of South Africa, we thank you for for being brothers and sisters. And Zimbabweans, tomorrow is a happy day. We're turning 45.
All right. And that's where we leave it. Thank you so much to our guests. So this is an incredibly important discussion, certainly for the two countries side by side. Mr. Farai Marapira is, of course, the spokesperson for ZANU-PF, speaking to us live from Zimbabwe in the Midlands. Sia Duma Biniza, political economist, joining us as well. In studio, former Minister Lindiwe Zulu, ANC NEC member, chatting to us on this one, and Mordekai Shumba, activist as well, speaking to us. A Pan-African activist speaking to us here in studio.